we set about creating our own community. And how do you create your own community of advocates and potential customers and ambassadors from the industry? We just embedded ourselves in agency events. We'd show up, we'd talk at events, we'd speak at events, we'd sponsor events, and then we decided to do our own events. And then up until the pandemic, we did our own events, and then it dropped off a cliff, and then we went back into the kind of sponsoring events. It's this thing about visible, credible, profitable. So we were always visible. We like to think we give lots of value, which our credibility builds off the back of that, and then that credibility and turns into relationships, and that relationship turns into opportunities and profit. So
today I'm joined by Cas Majid, the CEO of the WOW Group. They're a collection of 6 agencies covering everything from creative and marketing to Amazon PPC and development, all built out of Birmingham, UK. Cas has grown the WOW Group almost entirely without traditional outbound, and his main growth engine, which I picked up on in the first roundtable that we ran a couple of weeks ago, was something that I think a lot of founders would probably never really consider, turning competitors into clients. So I really wanted to delve into that in a lot more detail today. So in this conversation today, we'll get into exactly how that model works, why he feels that sales is a science and not a personality game, and the moment Cas realized the formula matters more than a person and a person's personality. So, Cas, welcome to the show.
thank you, Nathan. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you for being on. Really appreciate it. And you've been to both of our breakfast roundtables now over the last couple of weeks. And yeah, I think you've given a lot of people in those rooms a lot of food for thought about your approach to sales, because you've been in it for a long time. I can look at your CV on LinkedIn and it goes back to 1999. And so there's a lot of stuff that you've said over the last few weeks that I want to dig into, because I think it's relevant and applicable to a lot of founders out there that are building their companies or at different stages of their journey. But
Yeah.
before we drill into it, so just a little bit about your background and CV, because it's incredible. I was doing some research on you, and you've got an incredible background. Executive board director of the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, president of the Asian Business Chamber of Commerce, vice chairman of Ronald McDonald House of Charities, executive director at Birmingham Tech Week, obviously CEO of the WOW Group. But you started as a team manager at Intercom Telecoms in 1999. How do you go from there to the CEO of WOW Group 24, 25 plus years later?
Like, to be honest with you, Nathan, it goes back a little bit further than that. So I'm just going to give you a quick, plotted history. So I did my A levels and flunked them really badly. I was an A grade student up until that, really good at sport, really good at academia. And then, unfortunately, in 1988, my sister passed away all of a sudden doing my A levels. And then I went through a phase of just trying to understand what life was and get away from a little village that I grew up in West Yorkshire. Um, and the first university that took me was in Manchester, Salford University. After I'd failed my A level twice, and but I always knew before that I was going to be in business. I always knew that because my father, when he got made, took voluntary redundancy from his job, and before that he was an officer in the Air Force. He worked in a woolen mill and worked in HR. He took voluntary redundancy, and him and my brother bought a petrol station, and then they grew that to 8 petrol stations around the West Yorkshire region. And I used to love serving customers in there. I used to love it. I used to love it. And I used to love serving flowers to people because flowers put a smile on people's faces. And I always used to ask people, why is it you're buying these flowers? And it was either to make someone feel better, to cheer someone up, someone was in trouble, some sadness, So flowers are really good, and still to this day, I'd love to have a flower shop, I'd love to have a flower shop because the work that we do doesn't really put a smile on people's faces. Um, so um, so going from there, but I always wanted to have a really good job. So did my got through my degree, bumbled my way through it, and then I got a job with as a mortgage advisor for 4 years. I did that for 4 years, and it was a commission only sales role. I was a finance
Wow.
broker.
Tough
Later,
gig.
became yeah. To be honest with you, back in the day, and it was very much a just one of those things. I just thought, you know what, I can do this. And then I worked with a really good guy. He's a really good friend of mine who grew his company to like massive scale in that industry. And literally, it was kind of right. Create your own network, go and start selling, speak to people, ask them for referrals and recommendations after you've done a good job, and that's how I kind of built that little ecosystem for myself. And that teaching and that training still holds me in good stead now, you know, albeit it was a bit more ruthless then. It's a bit more kind of consultative and elegant now, but yeah, but I always knew I wanted my own business, and then I did that 4 years. And then I went and worked for an IT company, and then I worked for a telecoms company, and that was the best job I ever had. It was amazing, and the reason why it was the best job I ever had was because of my sales director, Steve Kelly. He was amazing. He really, really mentored me, looked after me, told me the ins and outs of how to do deals, how to sell, how to deal with customers. And I was dealing with like the whole of the NHS, the MOD. You know, I was the person that supplied QVC with the at the time email telephones that came out. So this is long before email was a big thing. So you used to be able to email from an Amstrad telephone, and I sold that to QVC, and I went on the QVC channel and helped them sell that product and all that kind of stuff. But I always knew in the back of my mind that I was always going to do something for myself. And Steve was
Mm.
really good. He always used to say to me, he said, "I know what your ambitions are. All I can do is help you towards, doing what you want to do." And then I left in 2002 and moved to Birmingham from Manchester to set up a business that failed in 6 months. It was like an IT business, and the two guys that I was with were I knew them, but they just weren't cut out for it. So that business failed in
Mm.
6 months. And then I met another couple of guys who were setting up a web development agency just after the dot-com bubble had burst, which was a great time, to be fair. You know, you don't know anything different. And uh, and then I didn't look back really. I just went out and won a government contract that was all about helping SMEs get up the what they call the E ladder. You know, how far you up the E
Mm.
ladder, and it's a big thing. So that was kind of my first taste of having my own business, as it were.
Mm.
Um, I always knew in the back of my mind it's all I've ever known, really. Um, and so I knew I was going to do that. And then we grew that business. You know, we grew it, and I sold it in 2009. The other two guys that were with me, they went off into a different direction. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to invest in a couple of other agencies, and I've tried doing other things, but it always brings me back to agency and digital and technology. You know, try doing like e-commerce stuff, build massive e-commerce stuff in some of our businesses. But that I wasn't really cut out for it. You know, something always brought me back to the
Yeah.
industry. You know, and I think over the last few years, I've just realised that this is my lane, and
Yeah.
this is what I'm good at, and this is what I understand.
Yeah.
I've had a really blessed career. You know, some of the things that you've mentioned. I've sat with the great and good. I've sat with prime ministers and presidents, and the bastions of industry, and kind of sat on tables with them and advising on policy. And you know, I was instrumental in putting the COVID package together for the businesses in Birmingham when through the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. So yeah, I've been really blessed and done some really amazing charity work over the years as well.
What an incredible history. And look, there's so much there that I want to dig into. And there's so many episodes, so many podcast episodes that I can just dig into each one of those areas that you mentioned. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about Steve and the influential person that Steve was in your life. It's so funny how there are these people that come into our lives at different points, and we know their names. We never, this was 20 plus years ago. You know his first name and surname, because he was so influential and so important to your life as a salesperson at that time.
massively.
Tell me something. I believe that great salespeople have a philosophy about sales and have a philosophy about how they think about new business.
Mm.
What was a philosophy or a couple of philosophies that Steve shared with you that really formed the basis of how you think about sales and that you've used subsequently to build your businesses?
Steve was. I still sometimes when something, every now and again we have some like wins. I'll always send him a message saying thank you for helping me. So I'm still in touch with him. He's an amazing guy, and
Incredible.
where he came from in Salford as a mixed race guy to where he got to was really inspiring. And I think one of the key things that Steve taught me and told me was this concept of um, giving giving everything that you can to the customer, and the customer is the heart of everything. The right customer, that is, because the customer is never always right. It's the right customer is always right. So that was a key
Right. Okay.
philosophy that he gave me, but also just to deal with
The
people
right customer is
professionally.
always right. I love that.
Yeah, just to deal with people the way you want to be dealt with, and no matter how many kind of disagreements I had with Stephen, I did have lots of disagreements with him. He never ever sold me out. He always backed my corner, and he believed in me. He saw something in me that other people may not have, and through life, you've got to really seek out those people that see something in you, that find something that special thing in you, because everyone's got something special. It's just a matter of A, finding it within yourself, and B, someone to help nurture that out of you. And he always used to push me. He always pushed me just beyond what I thought was possible. Not too much, but
Mm.
just beyond. And then he used to do that each and every time. Before you know it, you look back and you think, well, actually, I've just stretched myself as a person. I've just grown as a person. And I look back at those years and working with him with great fondness. In fact, we used to go to a telecoms event in Brighton called the TMA every year. And it used to be a real good laugh. And actually, just a few weeks ago, I was in Brighton at a conference, staying at the same hotel, and I sent him a message saying, I'm at the hotel that we stayed at over 20 years ago, 30, 25 years ago. So, yeah, so I always kind of stay in touch with him. And I think it's really important to stay in touch with those people because
Yeah.
um, they are the reason I'm stood on those people's shoulders, to be fair. They're the
Yeah.
foundations of my career. And I think always, I mean, the thing that sticks with me with Steve was the thing that he said to me. He says, I can't stop you from pursuing your dreams, but what I can do is help you along the way, you know? And I think as leaders and as entrepreneurs, that's a real lesson in how to deal with people. And that's how you get the best out of people.
So I want to go back to something that you said in the first roundtable about turning competitors into
Yeah,
clients, because I think most founders would hear that and be like, "Huh? How did you a how did you stumble upon that idea?"
yeah,
Because most people think, they look at competitors and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to share anything. I don't want to be too open. I want to be
yeah,
guarded.
yeah.
They're gonna take clients off me." How did that idea come about in the first place? Where were you in your business at the time? What were you doing before? And how did that
Yeah.
idea come about? Just talk us through that.
So when I exited out my first company, I then put some money into another company, and I and that other agency was a full service agency that did a bit of everything. It did a bit of SEO, technical work, design, paid. So it was like a full service agency, and that was around about 2012. And then in 2015, and we grew that business quite well. But then we hit a plateau, and then when you hit a plateau and then you lose a few customers here and you lose a few customers there, the pressure, kind of s- tells you who you really are. And in 2015, in that agency, we did 21 pictures, and lost every single one of them. And the reason we lost every single one of them is because we were vanilla. We were like every other agency out there. And at the time, we were already dealing with a couple of agencies helping them with like technical work because that was a really strong discipline in our business. Some of the technical work we had, some of the technical people that we had, and the technical work. And after we lost the 21st, I started scratching my head thinking, we can't do this anymore. This is really, really tough. And agency life's really tough. And it was a really low point in our evolution. Bear in mind, at the time, that agency was the very first, and there's still some stuff on YouTube. It was the very first to do like behind the scenes stuff around agencies, point of view stuff. We got so much traction on YouTube, and it was quite amazing. We got a television gig off the back of it as well because we got spotted.
Wow.
We just called a job interview. We were on Channel 4, but that was a kind of a different experience, which was an amazing experience to be fair. So,
Wow.
and so I sat and thought, and it actually took me back to when I was at Incom Telecommunications, because what I used to do in that business, my personal role was to build the channel. So we were manufacturers and distributors, but we used to go to wholesalers to sell our products. So we'd manufacture a certain type of telecom piece of telecom, and we go to wholesalers and providers and sell it to them, and they would sell it on. And so my background in sales in the IT industry, and particularly that business, was very much in what we call the channel. So I thought, well, I understand channel really well. I understand what we do and what we're really good at, which is we're really good at technical work. And literally overnight, I was like, we're not doing SEO, we're not doing design unless it's for internal work that we need to do for our technical work. We're not doing any SEO, we're not doing any paid stuff, and we're not doing any creative work. We're just going to be really good at one thing, which is going to be technical work, and our customers are going to be other agencies, because at the time agencies were coming to us saying, "Oh, my freelancers dropped us in the shit. Can you help us?" Or our developers leaving. We've been dropped in the shit. Can you help us out because we've got a glug of projects here, or we've got existing customers that we need to service. So, and that's how it happened, really. And our strapline in one of our
Mm.
businesses is we get you out of the shit that your freelancers just dropped you in. So that's the thing that we repeatedly see over and over again. And the moment we did that, Nathan, the moment we made that decision, clear as day, the problems that we solved like appeared. And the first one was what I've just said: we get you out of the shit that freelancers just dropped you in, which is the emotional hook. The second is if you're a creative agency, a PPC agency, an SEO agency, performance marketing agency, and you need someone to do the heavy technical lifting to get the results for you, so you can get the results for your customer. We're the partner that you partner with, because we understand you as an agency, we understand the pressures, we understand the nuances, etc., etc. And then the third problem that we solve is if your incumbent department is stacked out with work, we'll come in on a white label basis and help you get the projects over the line and like mitigate those bottlenecks. So those are the three problems that we solve in in our agencies, and that's what we repeat over and over and over and over again. And actually, we don't change the problems that we solve, because those problems are existent every single day for agencies, and that's how agencies became our customer. We're an agency to agency dev partner. That's exactly what we are.
I love this story so much because it talks through so many of the typical huge challenges that a lot of business owners face about being vanilla and typical and average, right? And being all things to all people, but nothing to nobody. I think you mentioned it in the last roundtable about being a mile wide and an inch deep,
That's
and
what we
now
were
and
when we
now
were full
you're
service.
a mile deep and
An
right,
inch wide and a
exactly.
mile deep, yeah.
And so what I love about this is that because of the 21 pitches and not winning one, I can't imagine what you went through. That's like painful. I've got an agency background as well, and just losing one or two pitches, you think it's the end of the world, right? 21 pitches in a year is like, I can't even imagine where your head was at. But that prompted some soul searching and a change in emphasis, and to get really clear about what is the problem that we're solving here, who are we solving this problem for, get really clear about that value proposition and that pain
Yeah.
point, and actually listen to the signals that are already coming into you, because you already had agencies coming to you saying, hey, this was the problem. And you weren't too blinkered in your thinking to go, well, we don't work with agencies, or we don't work with these kind of people. We only work with, so you were very open to about where those signals were coming from, and listening to the market, and getting really clear about that value proposition was really very important. Did you have any concerns? Or so I imagine that a lot of these people that were coming to you, these agencies were coming to you, they were in the previous incarnation, they were competitors, they were direct competitors that maybe even you lost some of these pitches too. Did you have any concerns about, or fears about, repositioning and going from that traditional model to more of a agency focused one? Talk me through that journey.
The short answer, Nathan, is no, I didn't have any concerns, because all of a sudden now I could empathize with an agency owner, with an agency leader when it came to dev work. And actually, that's extrapolated out. I empathize with agency owners because I know how difficult it can be, right? So when I could empathize with them, I can speak their language. So our service proposition that we built around that was about, well, a lot of the agencies come to us in that business as rescue projects. So they're either half done, or they're the communication is really poor. The customer's on their case, right? Because I've been through it. The customer's on their case. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back. It might be a small technical problem that's causing a massive nightmare because they can't get the result, they can't get it over the line, they can't get hold of the freelancer, the dev's strapped out with work. So the moment we kind of realize that we can empathize with them, and that speed of communication, cadence of communication, um, technical quality is really, really important, and we back our own technical ability. That if a project is half done, that we're not a set of developers that say you need to start it from scratch. I know, and I have the faith and the skill of my developers that they can pick something up and reverse engineer it and finish it off for the customer. So so now when you're having a conversation with an agency, I would say 10 times out of 10, they're always nodding their head thinking, yeah, I've been through that. I've been through that. We've got that problem. And a lot of agencies, when it comes to technical work, find it really difficult to find good, viable, business focused technical people and partners or employees. And they're usually reliant on one or two people. So we give them the outlet, particularly in our WoW brand. Yeah.
As you said, you're basically walking in your customer's shoes. You have lived that pain. So as soon as you open your mouth and start articulating the pain and challenges in their world, they're nodding their heads going, yep, that's our pain, that's us, that completely. And actually, as soon as you do that, they're thinking in their head, this person gets me. They totally understand my worldview and the shit that I'm in. Excuse my French. So that makes your job of selling so much easier. So talk me through then, how do you go from, okay, we're clear on the proposition, we're clear on who we're targeting. How do you start getting these agencies into your pipeline? How do you start new business conversations with them? And then how are you converting the first one, the first two, the first three? How does that go?
Well, we already had a couple on our books, and then we decided. Then we decided to do like, normal cold outreach, that kind of stuff, email, and it worked to a fashion. But actually, now what we do is and what I always wanted to do was create our own community of agencies where we had lots of value to our community. And so we set about creating our own community. And how do you create your own community of advocates and potential customers and ambassadors from the industry? We just embedded ourselves in agency events. We'd show up, we'd talk at events, we'd speak at events, we'd sponsor events, and then we decided to do our own events. And then up until the pandemic, we did our own events, and then it dropped off a cliff, and then we went back into to kind of sponsoring events. This it's this thing about visible, credible, profitable. So we were always visible. We like to think we give lots of value, which our credibility builds off the back of that, and then that credibility and turns into relationships, and that relationship turns into opportunities and profit. So we're really well embedded within the agency community. We've embedded ourselves, and we don't move from our core message. We don't move from our core strapline of we get you out the shit that your freelancers just dropped you in. It's across all our social medias. It's across my social media. We just say that over and over and over and over again. And it's like the best brands in the world, right? Like you look at
Mm.
Nike or you look at McDonald's, the reason why you see their brand all the time is because they want to rent the space in your mind, right? From a very young age. And obviously we don't have those types of budgets, but in our industry, we do that over and over again. And where that pays absolute dividends is when we're face to face with those people. So I can tell you now, Nathan, that although my LinkedIn profile is quite active and it's, there's always stuff going on there, and I've got like, a few thousand people on there. I think it's about 14 or 15,000 people. I've never once won any business from it. Not once.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not once.
Mm.
But when we go to an event or we turn up at a round table or something like that in our own industry, people say, "Oh, I'm glad I saw you. We're in the shit at the moment. Can you have a chat? Can we have a chat?" So, so to be present, because a lot of people see that the ROI. I mean, I get pitched every day on LinkedIn. It's like it's crazy, but the ROI is being present on there, and therefore what happens is that translates to when we see people face to face or at an event, they will come up to me and say, "Look, we need to speak. We've got some issues for this particular project or whatever it is."
Okay, like I have to dig into this now because this is really fascinating what you've just said. So you've got 14, 15,000 people on LinkedIn. And basically what
Yeah,
you're saying is that even though you post prolifically, you put a lot of content out there, you've built an incredible personal brand. What you're saying is that you don't get any direct work through LinkedIn directly. But
not,
actually,
not
as a result of going to events and making yourself public and showing up, these people that may have seen your content online and seen your content on social, that's when they choose to engage with you at these offline events.
yeah. I've been on LinkedIn since it started from the inception. I think it was 2008 or something, right? I'm nine or whatever, and I remember being on it from day dot. I can tell you since 2008 or seven, I've had zero leads from it. Like people inboxing me saying, "We need to talk,"
Directly messaging you.
directly messaging me.
Interesting.
Zero, zero. But
Mate, you're doing
I need
something
to look.
wrong.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know
Maybe it's
what's
my
happening.
personality. Maybe it's my picture. Maybe I don't come. Whatever it is, whatever. I don't.
You need to
And
smile
I've
more.
looked at that. Is it me? Is it, I'm not smiling. Whatever. Because can I have a kind of a rested bee face quite a bit, but it's just me thinking. So maybe I'm not approachable. Some people have said that to me in the past. So, but when we do our events, when we did our just recently our National Digital Awards, we had over 300 people from the industry in a room, and that's because of the work that we put into LinkedIn. Otherwise how the message is going to get out there. So I know it works for other people. We've got other, like in our group of agencies, we've got an agency that does brand and story and all that kind of stuff, and that we do get opportunities through LinkedIn through that, but for our agency to agency stuff, it's always through the old school way, which is, physically going, seeing people, and talking to them and adding value. And I think that's lost in this social media ecosystem that we have. That
100%.
there's got to be an end point to why you're doing this.
100%. Look, I love, as you know, I love the offline events, right? I love meeting people face to face. I've only started doing these breakfast roundtables recently, but the amount of the goodwill, the opportunities that have been generated off the back of it, just the opportunity to build close personal relationships. The last roundtable that I ran, the one that you came to, two of the other people stayed for an hour afterwards, just talking to me about life, business, the world, their kids, and in that hour, we've built this really deep bond, and it's turned into a new business opportunity. But you know, if I were to call someone and have that conversation, or if I were to message them on LinkedIn, it's just the barriers are up straight away. They don't want to engage. They're time poor. But actually, you get someone in a room, you build a relationship with them, you build some rapport, and it really helps you turn that offline content into a real fantastic relationship. Talk to me, so you don't have to sell me about on the benefits of doing this, but I want to learn from you, because you've been doing a lot of offline and online events for a while now. Obviously, your National Digital Awards. Talk to me about the difference between attending other people's events and doing your own, right? Because there'll be some founders listening to this going, okay, events is a good strategy. Should I go and speak at other people's events? Should I go and host? Should I exhibit at other people's events? Or should I host my own events? Like, you've done both. What are the pros and cons of each, and what would you advise a founder to do?
I mean, if you're doing your own events, then you've got to make sure that you've got that they're slick and that you've got everything nailed, and that it's a lot of effort, and then you've always got that thing, no matter how much effort you've put in. Even an hour before the National Digital Awards, I was still having anxiety, of
Are people going to
people
turn
going
up?
to turn up. It's always the case. It doesn't matter how many events you do. That even like 10 minutes before, you're thinking, are people going to turn up? And until I got into the room,
Cass,
you know,
I was bricking it last week.
yeah,
You could probably see my face last week. I think there were 5 people in the room at like 9 o'clock, and then 3 or 4 people came in afterwards, and I was like, oh God, thank God for that.
so it's very much so you got to deal with that, and plus the logistics of putting on your own events is quite there's quite a lot that goes into it, and I think a lot of people don't understand the cost of that, and B, the the amount of effort that goes into it. I had 4 people working on our big event for 6 months full time, right? So it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But then I put events on completely on my own to like have 200 or 300 people in some of the events that I did before the pandemic, and it does take a lot of effort. But you start owning the community, and then you can kind of control the narrative when you have your own events, sponsored events for other people as well, and you can control part of the narrative on that, and that's fine. It gets you in the room, you get to speak to people, and then you can obviously attend events, other people's events. And I'm always of the ilk is, if you go and attend other people's events, the first rule is don't sell, just try helping people, connecting people, because then you become connected. That's the first rule of, it's actually the first rule of selling: stop selling, try start helping, right? You got to help
Mm.
people. And so, attending other events, it's a great thing. It's a great place to start. But I'm always of the ilk of, now is to own and manage and like create your own community and add value to that community, because that community will be your ambassadors. They'll fly the flag for you. You'll be the center of attention. You know, things will be on you. To deliver that, and as long as you provide a really good experience, then people will remember it, and that's what we do with try and do with our events. We want people to go away with an amazing feeling, which is what they did with the National Digital Awards, and now our agency Slap event, which is going to be in October. We want people to really go away with knowledge and information, but also go away with a really good feeling.
So let's break this down now then for the founders that are listening. So talk me through, because I really want to understand this strategy in detail. How many events are you doing throughout the year? What does the calendar for the year look like?
Um, so what does the calendar look like? We're doing
For your own events?
for our own events at the moment. We're just putting our calendar together. We've got two really big events that we do every year: Summit and the awards, and then in between we'll do some round tables. So we're doing something practically every month. I know I'm doing something every month. Yeah,
Got it. And the people that are attending that are your ICP. They're the agencies that
yeah,
have these dev problems and pains. Great. And the National Digital Awards, you just recently ran it. 300 people attended that, and these
yeah.
are agencies from all over the country, I imagine.
All over the country. The furthest agency that came to that event was from New Zealand.
Wow. No pressure to make that good then.
They're actually
That's a
partners of
long way
ours.
to come.
They came from New Zealand
Okay,
especially for
fair
that
enough.
for the event. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Good. Did he did he did he enjoy it?
He loved
Did he
it.
get some
He
value
loved
from it?
it.
I
Yeah,
hope he
Graham
did.
loved it. Yeah,
Okay, good.
Graham loved it. Yeah, he was doing some
Fantastic.
mad flights over 2 weeks. He was here, but yeah,
So two major events throughout the year that
yeah,
you're putting on, as well as a number of sort of roundtables and other
yeah.
events that you go to. What is it generating for you in terms of new business pipeline opportunities? Help me understand that.
So in terms of opportunities, we'll always get opportunities off the back of it, but that's not the sole purpose of those events. The sole purpose of those events is to ace the awards is to celebrate our industry and giving back to the people that have supported us over the years, and the unsung heroes that are doing amazing work and just don't get recognised. That was really important
Mm,
for us, really important for me.
mm,
And then the summit, again, it's about knowledge. It's about providing insights and knowledge to the agency community and making sure that they go away and be that much better, a little bit better every time they come and hear something. So, in terms of business, that is our main source of business. The events that we put on, the roundtable events, we'll always pick something up from those roundtable events. We'll always pick up new business, and that's how we've grown our business. That's how we've been able to manage. I would say 90% of all our new business comes from those events, but also it's a reminder for our existing customers that we're still here and that we're still doing work, and it jogs them to do more business. Most of our business comes through existing customers rather than new business now. We focus on our existing customers and give them the best experience possible, which is, I think, very, very underrated and overlooked by a lot of people within our industry, particular. They'll always
massively.
on the lookout for new business. Our focus is on looking after our existing customers. We'll then get referred. We'll then get like introduced, and we pick and choose who we work with. Not to sound arrogant or anything like that, but we want to work with the right kind of people that have the right kind of understanding of what we do for them.
Well, I think this is a really interesting point, actually. I think when your pipeline is big and you've got a lot of opportunities in front of you, you can start picking and choosing who you work with.
Yeah.
But the challenge is for a lot of business owners is that they're not in that position. Their pipeline is so weak that actually they have to take whatever is in front of them, and that's actually quite dangerous because it forces you to work with someone that in the back of your mind, I shouldn't work with this person, but look, I got to pay the bills, payroll's coming up. I've got to just take the business. But having this approach and this strategy about creating events and having an abundance of opportunities that come up as a result of that, give you the opportunity to pick and choose. And that's a great position that most founders, a lot of founders in my experience, are not in. Help me understand, because this part is really important, actually. What do you do after the event has finished? What does effective follow-up look like? Because I think this is an area that a lot of founders trip up on. They put on an amazing event, or they'll attend an amazing event, they'll get some initial feedback and traction. But because they're so anti-selling and they don't want to be seen as an aggressive, hard-nosed salesperson, they won't follow up, and they'll leave that person sitting there for weeks, if at all, respond or email them or call them. What's your approach after the event? You've done all this, spent lots of time and effort putting on this event.
And a ton of money, yeah.
How do you follow up? What do you do?
So our follow-up is we will put on a series of round tables and invite some of those selected people to the round table, because that's where you start building really good relationships with people. So we'll do a 15, 20 people round table, put lunch on, and just get to understand where they're at and what they're doing, and where obviously we're hosting it. We control the narrative on that, and then Nathan, honestly, then people come to us. People actually come to us with the follow up because they know that we can
Incredible.
solve the problem. There's a process, but actually we wait for them to come to us rather than we're going proactively out to them and doing the hard sell or anything like that. We kind of caress them into what we do. Yeah, we do all the standard stuff like outreach and speaking to them on a regular basis, but they typically will approach us when they've got a problem or there's an issue, because they come to us when, like I said to you, it's either a rescue project or they've got a problem with resource or something like that, where something's not quite working, and so therefore we wait for them to come to us rather than us go to them. So it's very much it's very much inbound, but proactively we're outbound, if you know what I mean.
Interesting. So just to summarize for the founders listening, you put on two major sort of flagship events a year. You get upwards of 100, 200 people, 300 people attending. Off the back of those events, you then run a series of smaller roundtables where you can have deeper, more intimate conversations with these people, and
Yep.
that's where you're able to control the narrative. You're able to build deeper relationships, and as a result of that, then people proactively come to you.
They do, yeah.
Love that. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely love that approach. So we're kind of running very close on time now. I do want to bring it to an end, but there's so many other questions that I want to ask you, Cas, specifically about your philosophy on sales and everything else. I'm going to have to get you back on another podcast another time. So just to round things off, just a quick speed round. I want to ask you some short, sharp questions. I want you to respond as quickly as you can. Don't overthink any of these questions. Just let it come. Okay. Best sales hire you've ever made?
Girl who was a technical person. She didn't know she was really good at sales, but actually she was really good because when you put her in front of the customers trusted her. Call Hannah. She's really good.
It's really interesting, actually, because in the last roundtable we talked about, is it important to have technical ability or is it more important to have sales ability and sales skill? And actually what you're saying there is that to build that relationship, to get the customer to trust you, you really have to have a technical understanding first and foremost.
If you have a technical product.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
If you have a technical product, then it's important to have technical people to explain that product and how it
What's
benefits the
what
customer.
what's the worst sales advice that you followed, and what's the best sales advice that you've had?
The worst sales advice I followed um, is to focus on the cash.
Advice that you've had?
Don't focus on the cash. Focus on
The opposite.
focus on adding value to the person that you're doing business with,
Love
and
it.
always give a little bit more than they expect.
One thing that founders should stop doing in sales immediately:
One thing founders should stop doing
focusing on the
sales
cash.
is thinking that they're going to be outside of the loop, and thinking that sales is above them. That I'm the owner of the business. I don't need to sell. Absolutely, you do need to sell. And it keeps you sharp. It gets you an understanding of the industry. You get to speak to customers. You get to listen to customers. Part and parcel of what you should do is you should always be at the sharp end every now and again. Not always, but every now and again. But thinking that you're above it and it's above your station, that's the worst mistake that you can make.
It's so interesting. I work with a lot of technical founders who don't have a sales background necessarily, but are fantastic technically in what they do. And actually, they don't focus on sales until there's a problem, until they're forecasting revenue and they're like, oh my God, we're not going to hit our target. That's when they get intimately involved in sales. But actually, I think the best founders, in my experience, are the ones that build a foundational infrastructure and oversee the sales relationship throughout the year and are intimately involved. They don't have to be the best salesperson, but they have to
Yeah.
understand like what is the infrastructure that is being built here and how do I oversee it and make sure people are accountable, in my experience. A book every founder should read.
Who, not how, by Dan
Simon
Sullivan.
Sinek. Dan Sullivan. Yes. Why is that so good? I haven't read it.
Because we always get bogged down in the how. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I solve this problem? Instead of asking, and you're asking the wrong question. You're saying, who could solve this problem? Who could help me solve this problem? Because we're all a who to someone, right? I'm a who to my children. I'm a who to, my people that look to me for various bits and pieces, and they're a who to me. So, you know, our head of design and UX is, who's going to solve this problem? Well, it's going to be Matilda. Or who's going to solve that problem? It's going to be Osama. Who's going to look after this customer? It's going to be Neely. So you always got to be a who to someone. So who, not how, and change the narrative. Because when you get into the how, which is understandable, but I think it's the wrong question to ask. That was really profound for me.
Love that. Are you a big reader of sales books in general for
I
business?
used to
Well,
be. I
business
used to
books.
be. I used to be. Not so much anymore. I just find they're all tell you the same thing, and you have to read all of it to find that one little nugget.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've read a lot over the years.
Audibles.
Yeah,
Audibles where I go.
Audible. Yeah, I guess.
Definitely. I walk a lot, so yeah, I get my
Yeah,
information that way. Last question: inbound or outbound?
inbound.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Even
But
even though you started as an outbound guy.
yeah, I know. But like to create inbound, you've still got to do some outbound, right? Whatever you say,
Yeah.
you got to do some outbound. It's like I think it was Jim Rohn said, if you know, if you want to move. You're not a tree, right? So to get the cab off the rank, you have to be proactive. You have to be proactive until you become an inbound magnet, But you still have to do outbound, whether it's social media, whether it's paid ads, whether it's picking up the phone, whether it's email. You still have to do outbound to create the inbound, right? Because they both work hand in hand. You can't have, but I prefer inbound. But actually, to get the inbound, I've got to do my LinkedIn posts. I've got to go to events. I've still got to do something that's going to move me, right?
That's going to get clipped up for social media. I love that. what you just said there. Brilliant. And my last question that I ask all my guests, what's the one thing that you've done to make your business less dependent on you as a founder for revenue?
Create a vehicle that our people l- find opportunities within our existing customers by advising them and pointing them in the right direction, which creates revenue. So that's where I think that we've created an amazing system internally where people not just give their competence in their technical ability, but also can see opportunities for the customer, which in turn creates opportunities for us. It just kind of relieved me from having to go out and sell all the time. That's why we really focus on our existing customers.
It's a great place to end the conversation. Cas Majid, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been so much fun. Definitely got to do it again.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Have a great day.